recording so that we now have Riaz's talk. So, Riaz, you got spot number 2 for your lightning talk, and look forward to this. Why don't you take it away?
Yeah, let me go ahead and share. So be a couple slides, and then we're actually going to do some live coding. Yeah, welcome everyone. So this talk is called Pry Irresponsibly. For those of you that know, Pry is a gem that's a common Ruby gem that would be like an alternative to the IRB. So when you just do IRB and get an interactive console in plain Ruby, Pry is an alternative to that. But we're going to talk about some of the things you can do in Ruby using Pry. To introduce myself, my name is Riaz Virani. I'm a freelance web developer. When I lived in Atlanta, I was weirdly enough, I'm wearing this company, different company. I was CTO of a company locally called Load Up Technologies until I moved to Toronto. And yeah, and also if you want to read any more of the stuff that I do or make / watch talks, whatever, I posted it all on my website called riazv.me. So I do want to say that before we kind of do the rest of this talk, stuff I'm going to show you is not actually stuff you're supposed to do. So it's kind of like an anti-talk. It's really stuff that is helpful to know, but there's only a very small number of use cases where I'd ever recommend you actually use any of this in a real program or while you're actually coding. So I'm going to go into my little quick spiel of how we do the rest of the talk. So having trouble finishing all of your work, the problem is you're doing too many steps. You're wasting too much time writing your code, then running it. Think about all of the time that you waste on these 2 steps as distinct actions. So I have a really amazing solution for you. The answer is, what if you could write your code while it was running using Pry? That is your solution. You could take all of your steps and go from 2 to 1. Turns out you could write code a lot faster. So now we're actually going to take a look at how we would do that. So I've got a terminal here. You can kind of see, is that big enough for you guys, I assume? All right.
It was good to me.
All right. So the directory we're in doesn't have much in it. It's just got a gem file that has the gem Pry, because that's the gem that we're going to be using to kind of do our little exercise. So we're going to start up Pry. We've got no program, nothing. So we start Pry up, and I'm going to move this up from the bottom a little bit. Okay, let's do that. All right. So we run Pry. You know what? I am kind of lonely. I need a friend. So we are going to make a friend class because, you know, then I can instantiate friends whenever I'd like. So we do that. Now what I just did right there is I did .vim friend.rb. So whenever you use a dot in front of any command in Pry, means you can actually run commands on the terminal that is the parent for where you actually ran Pry. So you can really run arbitrary bash commands. And so inside of here, we are going to define friend, click initialize. And turns out, you know, friends, I don't have very good friends. They all take my dignity whenever they, you know, want to exist around me. They kind of use that as part of the cost I have to pay in order to hang out with them. But, you know, I'm desperate. I'll do that. I'm a programmer, you know, I mean, that's kind of how we live life. So we save this, and again, we can now run this command .ls. Shows us we've got that file. Great, we just didn't really do anything different except running this in this terminal instead of a separate terminal. And we'll go ahead and require it. Great, so now I've got my friend class loaded, right? I can do friend.new, give it my dignity. Oh no, but I forgot to save it. It's already lost. So another command you can also do is you can take whatever was the output of the last execution and use the underscore to reference it. So now I actually have a local variable referring to friend. Great. So I have friend. But you know, I don't quite trust my friend. I'm going to look behind the scenes to see what's actually going on. So this is going to a special Pry command. I can cd into my friend. And now the context I'm in executing commands in is actually the friend. So if I look at self, I am the friend. I can now, even without doing any of that fancy send stuff, I can actually look at the instance variable, my dignity, being like, all right, they've got my dignity, they're keeping it safe. and I can CD back out. So now my friend is there, I'm on the outside. So I'm kind of doing this, and at this point I'm realizing I have a shitty friend. They took my dignity. I actually don't know if this is a great relationship. I kind of want it back. So I'm like, hey friend, please give me my dignity back. So now I'm going to run this other magic command where I'm going to edit friends. Edit, again, is another magic pry command where you can edit classes in line. So I hit edit friend, and now it's opened Vim back up, and this is actually editing the instance on disk and in memory simultaneously. So I've asked my friend to give my dignity back, and I'm like, you know, I'll say, can you please define, just, you know, give me some of my dignity back. It would be nice. So, you know, it's like, you don't really need it. But my friend's kind of a dick and is like, no. And so I'm going along and I'm like, hey friend, please give it back to me. And so I just want to verify, like, I have a friend method a give back method. So I can look at friend. So ls again will inspect that instance, tell me all the methods that exist on it, tell me the instance variables. This is actually a really useful thing that you should actually use all the time. And it's like, hey, now I have this give back method that you know, didn't exist until we just did this. So I'm like, friend.give back. Oh no, it ran a runtime error and I got the result no because it was raising an error. And I am really distraught. I mean, how could my friend of 5 minutes do this to me? In fact, I have to look at it again. I just keep staring at it because I'm so upset at how rude my friend has been. And now I'm just outraged, right? So I do WTF. So again, underscore exception, it allows you to look at the last exception that was raised by using that sort of special reference. WTF is a real thing. It shows you the last exception and the stack trace of the last exception. In fact, they've programmed in that the more exclamation points you add, the more of the stack trace it will show you. They are that clever. So you can do that if you're really like me and like to stare at your own disappointment. So I'm like, this is pretty bad. How did I get here, right? So I can wonder what happened. What's the history of my friends? I can run the hist command, and it will show me all of the previous commands that I've run to kind of get to this point. I can stare at all of my mistakes. But then, you know, I kind of start getting my mojo back. I mean, come on, like, I'm the programmer. That's the program. It may be my only friend, but at the same time, I control the source code, right? So I'm going to now not use the edit command. I'm just going to monkey patch in line. And this is a thing you can actually do even in IRB. So I'm going to essentially open the class back up, and I'm going to define a steal back method. And you can see the apostrophes there are telling me that essentially I haven't executed anything. I'm just now defining lines to execute as sort of a multi-line execution. Oh, whoops, that was really a mistake. But now I'm like, oh shit, I'm actually going to just have my dignity be destroyed. I don't want to just end this, right? I want to actually edit the line I just did, even though I'm editing in line. So I'll be like, make sure, where are we right now? So show input will show me the current lines that I'm typing in progress that haven't executed. And I'm like, okay, line 3, I want to edit that. So I can do amend line 3 exclamation mark. And now it's letting me re-edit line number 3, where I will do just at dignity because it's just going to return as the last line. And I can do end. So now I get the symbol because I've defined the method. So again, if I look at my friend, and again, I have not reinstantiated friend. I'm just exploring, I'm editing the sort of definition of that friend as we go. I'm not like, oh, I need to reload and add a new friend. And there's no hot reloading. There's no fancy Rails stuff. This is purely just plain Ruby. So that friend has this stealback method. Not only that, like everything we are doing is not even in memory. If I do .less, well, you don't have to even use .less. Let's use .less. And RB. If you look at the source code, all the things we are doing are actually in the source code, except for the very last one, because the sort of monkey patching is online. So if you run the edit command, it's actually going to edit the source. Again, if we just do the sort of class friend stealback, that's a plain Ruby thing. But what I wanted to show you is how to essentially do multi-line sort of inserts and manipulations with Pry. Some of this stuff, by the way, for those of you that are like really good at IRB, are actually have been backported to IRB. Like you have like binding to IRB now and stuff, which is binding that Pry is like a debugger statement. But Pry is still pretty full featured. So anyways, let's do friend.steal back. Great, I get my dignity back, hooray. Yes, thank you. I'm now half my dignity back. The other half is with all the other friends that I was kind of writing this talk. And I'm like, I feel good now, so I'll do dot get init dot get add dot get commit take that. That's like the best commit message. Here we go back in history and it's like, take that. It's like, whoa, what did they do? We'll exit. So now I look at my source. Oh, there's a friend file. And yeah, and if we look back at the source of that file, it has the give back method that we added with the edit command. We created the file from the terminal. And if I do, git status, we have a git repo. And if I do git ls, if I do git log, maybe, sorry, you can see that we do have the take that command that we just entered. Sorry, this thing I don't have the git ls. I think I have it on a different thing I added. And so we'll jump back to here. We use one of my favorite ending GIFs. All right, and that's the end of the talk. Quick lightning talk. So I will end there and take any questions.
That was pretty impressive. I did not know about that, and I use Pry daily for hours a day.
Yeah, there's so one of the guys who is one of the maintainers of it. This was an old talk. Like he actually does do development this way. He starts up the editor and then like writes it as he's going. And I was like, but I think does a lot of like DevOps scripting type stuff, which I think makes a little bit more sense than like doing a web application this way. I gave this talk one time back, and there is a very practical use for it. If you're ever like trying to debug some weird thing and you're in like a Rails console in production, and you want to do this very, very carefully, right? But if you want to obviously like make it easy for yourself to edit files because you're trying to test something real quick or tweak something, and you're like, to get this up and try another iteration of it, maybe even adding some put statements or Rails logger statements. That's a pretty valid reason to maybe edit things in line if you're just doing some, you can't reproduce it locally or something like that. But obviously, I don't think that's sort of like monkey patching. It's like you can do a lot of dangerous stuff with that. But you could have a case where you need to get onto a production server and not keep running redeploys, where you need to sort of just in your own console mess with source files. So that is a
That's especially true if it's a third-party integration that's failing.
Yeah.
What the heck's going on with this OAuth 2 callback or something?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So like you can actually run a sequence of statements, and the thing you can say, in fact, the edit command can even take methods. So you can do class, you can do method, and to go in there and to like actually do an edit to insert a binding.pry at the right spot, so that you can then run it again and then get a pod statement there. That's an interesting way to do it. There's also a thing called Pry Remote, where you can essentially insert Pry statement and then it'll hang there, and then you can actually run a separate terminal command to essentially connect to that session, because it might be that you're not able to get in the middle of the process, right? That's actually receiving the request. There's a lot. I didn't do this in this talk, but there's actually a like Pry gist where you can actually from within Pry create gists of the things that you just did. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I don't know, actually there's a practical use case for that at all, but that's another crazy thing you can do.
So I saw that Mayra made a comment about not liking Pry. Do you want to unpack that a little bit? Like,
yeah. Do you specifically, I guess the question would be, do you prefer like sort of puts-based debugging, or do you mean specifically the gem pry versus like using like a binding.pry sort of like almost like a debugger statement in JavaScript? I'm actually curious for anyone else. I'm actually curious in general how many people here use like is there like you're developing, you're always constantly debugging, right? So it's like how many people here primarily just like put statements and log things and then look at the logs and then after running something, or put in like a binding.pry, hang the server, inspect things, move on. And how many people use like a an IDE based debugger?
I'll mute there. I would say that I historically have used Pry a lot. I use it a lot when I'm writing RSpec tests because binding.pry does not work incredibly well when everything's running in different Docker containers. So like it scrolls by so fast and doesn't block. And so I've had to break my habit of just constantly throwing a pry, working on something, improving it, writing a test. I would say 99% of my RSpec tests start out with it do and binding.pry. And then I like experiment a little bit with it, and then I put that in the test file. And I experiment a little bit more, and I put it in the test file. I test the asserts like, and then I put it in the test file. I would say that's my primary mode of troubleshooting development. I mean, heck, I've used binding.pry to figure out the object structure of LibreOffice in Java in JRuby as I build up my library of document manipulation. So, someone's audio's gone crazy.
It's Riaz.
Riaz is muted right now. Wow. It was totally Riaz. Riaz, I don't know what's going on. Oh. Dimitri accidentally muted you. I thought I was clicking on Riaz, but my mouse moved.
Oh, it's funny. I saw that you muted everyone, but then the buzzing continued.
I know, that was really weird. I was like, who is this? Anyway, so these were two really great talks. I really appreciate them both, and for stepping up. And even a 30-minute talk takes a lot of effort to prepare, so thank you.
Thanks, Riaz. I love the storytelling in your talk too.
I know, his friends are such drains.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. I just switched mics. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah. I don't know. I thought it's hard to know if humor will work or not. If you just look cheesy or if it's actually gonna be funny. But yeah, I thought it was kind of interesting, especially because we're doing something kind of zany. So appreciate it.
Hey, so I want to clarify. So the edit command, it lets you edit the file, but then it automatically reloads it. Is that what it does?
Yeah. So if you're just doing class whatever, that's the same as just monkey patching, right?
Right.
Versus if you're doing the edit command, it's editing it's editing the version loaded in memory and the source.
One trick that I've done a lot, because I do prefer puts debugging over binding pry, and that's just from years of habit. But one thing I'll do is have a separate terminal up, and I'll tail the development logs, and I'll grep. So I'll just have a keyword like Dave or something in there. So when I'm doing the puts debugging, I'll tail the development.log pipe grep Dave. And so it'll only puts out in the log or in my tail whatever keyword I specified. And so that's how I'll do the puts debugging and not get cluttered with a whole bunch of other mess. If I need to see the full request, then I can look at the normal logs without the grep. But that served me really well over the years, especially in instances you were talking about, Frank, with Docker, or if you're using Kubernetes or something like that in development where you don't have that direct access to the host machine or that instance running.
Just a heads up, Frank, I actually found a way that if you're running one-off commands, I found a way to get it to work pretty well. If there's a couple commands you can put to make it like interactive terminal, and then it does work fine. But if you're using Docker Compose to like run the server and everything else together, then it doesn't work. It has to be like a one-off, like Docker Compose run whatever, and then it works fine.
Interesting.
So just another option. And you can also, in that case, use Pry Remote, where it'll hang, and then you can run a separate command. It'll give you the command to run to like essentially like connect over a socket to that thing. So it's one extra step, but it does. Work.
Pry Remote may not be a bad idea too. That is exactly what it's used for. I guess the problem didn't become acute enough to throw in something new in the gem file, but that's a decent idea.
Well, Pry Remote hasn't been updated since 2017, though.
That's not a great idea.
It still works.
Yeah,
It does still work, but yeah, it hasn't been updated in forever. I have no idea. Yeah.
Cool.